Trump doesn't like to be challenged with fact. He doesn't like to be told he's being dishonest when he verifiably is. And he can't answer many simple questions without lying or without changing the subject. He expects a compliant media to let him get away with it. But here's the problem. He's the president of the United States of America, where a journalist can challenge the president with fact, and she is protected by the Constitution. And so, too, is his temper tantrum.
I always enjoy watching these clips from Brianna Keilar off of CNN because she does a thorough job of dissecting both the president of the United States as well as the conservative media that is established to protect him. This is a little long, but I always find them rewarding. So take a listen into this segment.
CNN has identified at least 16 false or misleading claims in the president's interview with 60 Minutes, which he ended abruptly and stormed out of. He's still upset over this interview with Lesley Stahl. His favorite emotional support anchors joined in the grievance parade, claiming that Joe Biden wasn't asked difficult questions during his interview with 60 Minutes.
You give him a layup, you give him an out. This is why CBS is third at night.
We should note that Jason Miller, the president's own senior advisor at the campaign, complimented Norah O'Donnell for her questioning of Biden and Kamala Harris. But let's look at these questions that the president received that he claims were so unfair. Before I roll the tape, we should note Lesley Stahl fact-checked his answers to these questions constantly because he lied or he dodged. But that's on him, not her. So let's look at the questions that she asked.
Are you ready for some tough questions?
Should be at 60 Minutes. He's the president, up for re-election in the middle of a pandemic and a troubled economy.
Why do you want this job? Why do you want to be president again?
Now, that is the most basic question and an essential one for a presidential candidate or really any job. Haven't you been asked that question? I know that I have.
Let me ask you what you think the biggest domestic priority is for you right now.
That's an important question. It's also an obvious one, except his answer was a lie. He claimed he led the greatest economy even before the pandemic, which Stahl fact-checked him on.
And who is our biggest foreign adversary?
He answered China, pretty straightforward question there, certainly timely given the real-time interference against the U.S. election. Then the topic turned to polls suggesting that he is bleeding support from suburban women.
One of the reasons is that they don't feel you're being upfront about the pandemic. Are you deliberately downplaying it?
Now, that's a fair question, since he is downplaying it, and he admitted that on tape.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't want to create a panic.
The next question from Lesley Stahl that the president thought was out of line.
I wonder if you think that masks don't work.
He mocks masks, even though they're a proven deterrent to coronavirus spread. He both sides them here, and he rarely wore them before contracting the virus or after contracting it. So, yeah, that's an important question.
I'm watching all these people jammed in together, and I'm seeing most of them without masks. And I'm wondering the message that you're sending with these pictures coming across television.
After this, he brags about the size of his rallies, and then maybe this is the question that the president's favorite network thought was just too tough.
Tell me about the mask wearing.
You're so negative. These are the biggest rallies we've ever had.
Now,
okay, I want to pause it there because the segment is a little long and there's so much in this clip that's worth dissecting. The first half of this is all about Brianna Keilar making the case that these questions were not difficult. And she does a masterful job at it. But there's one thing that I want to point out. It's not that these people, Donald Trump and Fox News, don't know that these questions are fair and that they're easy. It's the fact that they have an agenda to make sure that he's never questioned at all. It has nothing to do with whether or not these are biased questions. They know these are easy questions. These are questions that any candidate, any politician, especially the president of the United States, should be able to answer. They just don't want him asked the question to begin with. It's all about making sure that there is never any accountability for what this man has done to this country. Because if he ever starts being held accountable, then he's going to have to answer for the 225,000 deaths that occurred, that a recent report stated, of which 130 to 210,000 did not have to die. If he is ever held accountable for anything, then he will be held accountable for everything. Therefore, they know these questions are easy. They simply don't want him to ever be questioned. Let's keep going with this interview, or this analysis rather, by Brianna Keilar.
The question that he's been asked for 5 straight years, including 4 in which he's occupied the White House, a question he can't answer, which makes it even more imperative to ask.
Okay, I'll ask you another health question, okay? Told you, okay. You promised that there was going to be a new health package, a health care plan.
Yeah.
You said that it was going to be great. You said it's ready, it's going to be ready. It'll be here in 2 weeks. It's going to be like nothing you've ever seen before. And of course, we haven't seen it. So why didn't you develop a health plan?
It is developed. It is fully developed. It's going to be announced very soon.
Back to Fox for a second. Just listen to the Sunrise Trio.
The end of President Trump's interview, when he said, "I'm done," Kayleigh McEnany brought his health care plan in and handed it to Leslie Stahl because she was questioning him about that. He did say
it was gigantic.
Yeah, it was huge.
I know they're impressed by big books, but there is no comprehensive replacement plan that has the potential to become law in that binder, and they know it. It's just political theater, a bunch of executive orders put out by the White House precisely to look like they're doing something about health care as they try to kill the current health care law, along with all those trees that were needed to fill that binder.
Okay, that part was excellent because, listen, this is the standard. The bar is so low. The bar is so low in this country for journalism. The bar is so low in this country for the president of the United States. The bar is so low in this country for this type of shenanigans coming from Fox News and the White House. The fact of the matter is that they understand that these things don't matter to their supporters. Their supporters do not care that Donald Trump doesn't have an agenda. Their supporters don't care that Donald Trump doesn't have a health care plan. Their supporters don't compare. Donald Trump supporters do not care if the president repeals the policy that they actually depend on. There are so many conservatives who depend on the Affordable Care Act, but they are so committed to their subservience to Donald Trump. They are so committed to their bigotry and their ideologies that they are willing to play this game of there's a plan in this book, when they know full well there is no plan in this book, and they know that if Donald Trump has his way, that so many of them will lose their coverage. But it all boils down to their support base, the supporters who still, no matter the fact that Donald Trump is going to take away their health care, they love him so much and they hate Obama so much that they would rather lose their own health care than to ever betray Donald Trump's attack on Obamacare. It is so convoluted. It is so convoluted. Just think of it this way. They are so committed to their bigotry that they're willing to die for it. Let's keep going with Brianna Keilar's breakdown.
Here's another question. Relevant, since Trump is on the campaign trail holding rallies that are ripe to be super spreader events like his one at the White House, when some of his supporters are from far right-wing groups or they're from conspiracy theory groups deemed a threat by the FBI.
Before she answers this question about QAnon and some of his supporters, I want to bring up one last detail. She really points out something here. These people are so committed to Donald Trump and his bigotry that they are willing to go to these events and contract COVID-19. So surely they're not going to have any problem dismissing the Affordable Care Act, even though they need it. They need Obamacare, but they are willing to let it go because they are that committed to their bigotry. They are so committed to their bigotry that they will go to these events, contract COVID-19, and potentially die from it. Let's keep going.
A threat by the FBI.
Can you characterize your supporters?
Then the conversation turns to his opponent, but not his current one.
Hillary Clinton She deleted 33,000 emails after she got a subpoena from the United States Congress.
But why is this still an issue? Why do people, they're not going to vote on that.
Why is this still an issue, Stahl asks. Fair, since Clinton is not running for president right now, and neither is Hunter Biden, the squad, or Gretchen Whitmer. And here's the question about the Michigan governor, the recent target of a domestic terror group's kidnapping plot.
Okay, before we get to Gretchen Whitmer, we got to back up a little bit because this is a great analysis. This is a great review by Brianna Keilar, but there's something in this that Leslie Stahl as well as Brianna Keilar missed. It is the fact that Donald Trump has completely run his course. He has nothing new. He has nothing to offer. He has no policy decision that he could stand on. And he is so desperate for a win that he's pulling back all of his greatest hits of 2016. It's almost like the football player who never got over the fact that they won the championship in high school 30 years ago and they're still wearing the jersey. No, my friend, that moment has come and gone. There is nothing relevant to 2020 that took place in 2016. But that's all he has. He has no substance. All he has is an attack. And because he hasn't been able to successfully attack Hunter Biden, he has defaulted all the way back to lock up Hillary Clinton because of her emails. And that lock her up chant has gone beyond Hillary Clinton and now is extended to Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. Listen in.
You want to lock her up?
And by the way, that's other. Of course I don't want to lock her up. Why would I?
Now, the president has attacked Whitmer over and over again, even telling Michigan to liberate after her restrictions due to coronavirus. So where would his supporters get that impression?
You got to get your governor to open up your state, okay? Lock them all up.
Pretty clear why Leslie Stahl asked that question.
There's one other point here that Brianna Keilar doesn't mention that I think is critical. It's the fact that Donald Trump is actually, in that clip, acquiescing to his audience. I've been saying this for quite some time, and I want you to take this in consideration. It's not just the propaganda that comes from the top down to the bottom, from Donald Trump to Fox News to the people. It's the demand of the people. This is something that Orwell didn't account for, George Orwell in 1984. We always got the impression that the propaganda would be the people being controlled by Big Brother. But in this case, Donald Trump was controlled by the people because they had fed this bigotry, this dogma, this derangement, this political derangement. Donald Trump has fed it to the point where now the people demand it. And so Donald Trump had to say, lock her up, because the audience demanded it. And if Donald Trump doesn't give the audience what they are now demanding, then the people, the audience, will leave Donald Trump and go find someone else who will. And so now the monster that Donald Trump and Fox News created and they once controlled has now taken over control of them. Let's keep going.
Being divided against itself. Do you feel that? Do you think that your tweets and your name calling are turning people off?
We hear over and over from voters that Trump has lost from 2016 until now, that this is a concern for them. He should answer for that.
Well, then you brought up a lot of subjects that
Well, I said
were
I'm going to ask you
inappropriately brought
tough
up.
questions.
To recap, the subjects brought up that President Trump deemed inappropriate: the pandemic, the economy, foreign policy, his health care plan or lack thereof, his supporters, the election, his rhetoric and tweets. Those are fine topics, standard even. It's not the topics or the questions that are out of bounds, it's his answers, and Leslie Stahl pointed that out. Trump doesn't like to be challenged with fact. He doesn't like to be told he's being dishonest when he verifiably is. And he can't answer many simple questions without lying or without changing the subject. He expects a compliant media to let him get away with it, but here's the problem. He's the president of the United States of America.
Okay, so that was a great piece by Brianna Keilar. She always does an amazing job. But there's one final thing that Leslie Stahl didn't point out and Brianna Keilar didn't point out. It's the fact that we have to go through this in the first place. It is the height of absurdity that we are in a place in America that we have to actually dissect and break apart the complete and utter absurdity of someone like Donald Trump. The fact that Donald Trump can have power in this country to begin with. The fact that he is so malignantly incompetent that he contributed directly to the deaths of 225,000 Americans, 210,000 of which did not have to die. And yet we still have to play these games of rhetoric and analyses and breaking apart in order to convince people to vote him out of power when he should never have been in power in the first place. How many different ways do we have to break this down? How many different ways do we have to demonstrate to America that Donald Trump is a megalomaniac, a sociopath, who's more concerned about his ego than the well-being of the American people? How many different ways do we have to do this? Let me put it this way. There is not a woman in the world, black, white, or other, who could ever get away with the foolishness that Donald Trump got away with. There's not a black person, man or female, or non-gender conforming individual who could ever get away with what Donald Trump got away with. It is only the privilege of a white, conservative, rich man who can get away with being this grossly incompetent and still ascend to the highest office. And we have to pretend as though the only way to approach this is by trying to reason and have reason and rationale and logic and dissect his arguments, when we should not have to be faced with this in the first place. Can I just make that clear? We should not have to be dealing with this foolishness from this incompetent schmuck to begin with. But it's because no matter how incompetent you are, if you are rich, no matter how incompetent you are, if you are a conservative, no matter how incompetent you are, if you are a rich, conservative white man, America has to put up with your incompetence. America has to put up with your ego. America has to put up with the number of people that you would kill. We saw this with George W. Bush. He took us into an entire war. And thousands of American troops, hundreds of thousands of Iraqis died, and we had to negotiate and navigate all of his failures. We've seen this over and over and over again in history. So the real question is how long will the rest of us who are not wealthy, privileged, white, conservative men have to put up with the destruction and the devastation that's caused by wealthy, rich, conservative white men? That's the real question. That's the real point. And that's what we have to get to the bottom of.